Hello, everyone. This week, I'm a bit sick, so I'm going to see if I can keep this short. Not short like I'm going to short change you people, but I have a short book, so it worked out. This week I read X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, this isn't the movie. I haven't seen the movie. I think this is based on the comic book. From the cover, it looks like the 81 edition of the comic book. Now, I am not big into comics or graphic novels or manga. I have a couple here, right, and a couple more off screen. But I wouldn't say I'm expert enough to come on here and give a critique of a comic in any way. They don't, what do we say? They don't speak to me, I think, the way they would had I grown up with them. I did not. I grew up with books. So I was kind of interested in how this one would go. Now, it's not, okay, because we've read a novelization. This isn't a novelization. They say it's an adaptation of the comic book. And it's done by Graphics Audio. It's like a movie in your mind. That's their slogan, people. They are fantastic. I've read a few of their books. I think some Vampire Hunter D books that I want to buy, amongst others. Okay. So you can go, right, like completely monotone narrator from an audiobook. You can go to one who likes to sort of maybe modulate their pitch. You can end up with someone who wants a lot of modulation and, let's say, a specific voice for each character. Andy Serkis does this. I haven't reviewed the audio book yet, but he does this for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, where it's him doing a voice for each character. It's God tier. You can also have a full cast. Graphics Audio does a lot of full casts where each character is a different thing and the narrator is its own voice, right? And on top of this, you can do sort of like they did back in, the 50s and the 40s, when radio was big, and you'd have all these radio shows on CBS and whatnot, and they would, they're dropping props and making sound and all this kind of thing. You can sort of add on top of all of this an almost over-the-top sound effect situation. Now, some people who read books, right, don't like too much sound effect. So it's here, but I don't think it's over the top. Sometimes it will be, like, say, background noise, so it sounds like a cafeteria or a busy street. There's some, of course, engine sound, some plane sound, some crashing sounds, things like this. But I don't think it's too over the top. Especially since we're dealing with a comic book. Again, I haven't read the comic book, but I feel like, again, coming from the other angle, what is it? In some moments, I'm getting a sound description, where in a book, I would get the verbiage description. So in that sense, I don't have all the words that I would want, but it makes up for it in, I say, ease and ambiance. And I would assume now that your comic book reader, your graphic novel enthusiast, listening to this would be missing out on the artwork itself, right? That has to be some part of the enjoyment of comic books, of manga, is it's 200 pages of art from an artist, right? That's enjoyable. So you're missing out on the art, the same as I'm missing out on the words. And I think the middle ground here is these sound effects that sort of blend a little of the two. So I think in that sense, you'll enjoy it. I think you'll find enjoyment in it, even if you are really big into comics. Same as I'm really big into reading. And especially, with an extra emphasis on books done by Graphics Audio. Now, it's not an ad. I've said it like twice. I'll take the ad money, Graphics Audio, if you're listening. But no, I'm just a fan. a fanboy of graphic audio because they're very, very well done. Not, again, not over the top. We aren't in the 40s and 50s. We have grown up with televisions. We don't need every little thing, every little creak. We don't need the actors going overboard. But they do a good dramatical job. We start with Kate walking through sort of a bombed out New York. And they make a point of this that carries. It's Kate, Aurora, Logan, right? We're using all of their, I guess, normie names versus when we go into the past, which they end up calling, they'll have a big break and say today or tomorrow. That's the big break they use to move you in and out. I was wondering, are we just going to go from the past to today and then back? No. It ends up being sort of a dual back and forth story between the two time frames. But in the past, well, in the horrible future, it's names, right? Kate, Aurora, Logan. When we come back to today, I guess the past for them, it's back to Storm, Wolverine, Kitty. Right? We use the names as an extra distinction so we don't lose track, we being the listener, so we don't lose track of where we are existing in the moment. You never get it wrong. It's pretty slick. I like it. You're going to have, I guess I want to say almost, what do I want to say? Almost a third of the whole book. Maybe half? No. It's not half. But a good chunk of this book is combat. Combat in dialogue and combat with these sound effects. They're pretty high energy. They're pretty high energy, well described action sequences. So it does come across like an action movie book, if that makes sense. It's very enjoyable. It's a bit of a change of pace. In between, of course, you do get your sort of deeper dives into the morality of time travel, of what it means to the continuum, etc. Those are fun too. But there's a lot of action in this, so be prepared for that. Nothing gratuitous, right? We're not really leaning on exploded limbs and guts hanging in. It's not like a war. It is a comic book. So, in our future, in tomorrow, as they say, we're dealing with a post-apocalyptic world. What happened is the Sentinels being, I guess, large building-sized robots designed to attack mutants. And of course, the computers are going to go out of control, right? We know Skynet, the Sentinels, Ultron, the Ultron Initiative. You can never make an AI that's not going to lose its mind. It's just a well-known fact. Okay? So, these Sentinels are very cool. They have these weird digitized voices. They are characters. Are not interchanging information because they're going to be interrogated. They'll use lie detection. If they find any deceit in your syntax, they might just kill you on the spot. They're very, very much a problem in the future. And it's so much of a problem that, the entire North America is just ruined by them. And the world's watching because they have wind that they're going to take their operations global. So far in this story, they're not in Europe yet, and Asia, etc. But that they're prepping to go global. And of course, before they allow that to happen, all the other countries are going to nuke every Sentinel establishment in North America to prevent this, which would just be, the ruination of America. And so this is why we're risking everything to send this girl back in time. How they do this, this is always a question, right? What they do is they get, telepathic mutant, and they're going to grab Kate's mind and chuck it back to Kitty's 15-year-old mind down along the continuum. Do they lean too hard into how this is possible? No. If you get too lost in specifics, we're not having a comic book movie anymore, or a comic book anymore, because they'll do this a couple of times where there's a campiness either to comics or to this comic, wherein sort of obvious things are looked over on purpose to get us to a cool moment. I mean, we do this 2 or 3 times in this. And normally, again, it would really bother me, but it doesn't in this one because it's kind of blatant about it. It's part of the energy of these type of stories, right? The moment is more important than these other little issues you might have, right? This is sort of the fun of this, but this is one of the moments because I'm like, how? And I'm like, well, if you're asking too much, how? You're listen to yourself. How can a telepath find a past person's mental? I'm like, you really want telepathy explained to you that hard? And I'm like, I really don't. Now that you ask, because it's slowing down the story, and I'd rather have fun. And the author's like, I know you would. And that's why we're not going to bother, and we're just going to go have fun. This is the energy you have. It does work. It does work, and now we have a 34-year-old Kate sent back into her 13-year-old self, which I think makes for some awkward moments, I would say. Now, I think it was written in 81, and I guess the 80s were just a little bit different than today. Because I'm like, if you bump this up at least 3 or 4 years, I'm a lot more comfortable than I am with her, 13-year-old. Because in the future, her grown self, nothing wrong with this, is with Colossus, and they've had some kids already. And I think some of them kids have died. That's how bad it's getting in the future. So she's had a relationship with this grown dude. And he's older, right? So, but if you're 30-something and he's 40-something, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you tick the clock back, you're going to get to a moment where he's grown, 20-something, and you're like a teenager. And now I'm in somewhere I don't exactly want to be. You get what I'm saying? We get some of these moments in this book, and I'm like, this is unnecessarily awkward right now. And some of our other characters are like, anyway, let's not talk about that and just sort of get on the mission. So this is what they do, but it does make for some awkwardness. And I just got to blame the 80s for this, okay? So if you read this and you get semi-offended, there's nothing happens that should offend you. Nothing at all. But you think thoughts. You think thoughts you don't want to think because they're just there and you're like, So that's a little unpleasant. So now she's in the past. And I do have to wonder about their overall strategy. And again, this is another one of those comic book, let's not think too hard about it, otherwise it makes it less fun. Because if I'm sending someone into the past to meet other past people, right? So I know these people, and I'm going to send them, and they're not going to believe I'm time traveling, because who believes that to begin with? Nobody. I'm like, if y'all tell me sort of like a deep secret that young me shouldn't know, it'll move this on a lot faster. They don't do this. They don't send her back with any kind of secret information. It's just the story of their day-to-day. Of how bad the Sentinels are, of I saw you die, and Magneto's in a wheelchair, this kind of thing. And I guess she just says it with enough emphasis that they believe it. And we just move on from there. I mean, Logan was bringing up a point where it's like, I think we have Emma Frost and a few other mind control-y people who could just implant these memories into this girl. And it's all a trap. I'm like, that's completely reasonable in the world he lives in, full of telepaths. And I'm like, and you didn't make a better plan, but we just move along after that. Tomorrow, that is the future, or the present, if you're thinking in terms of the book's lore. because our story started in tomorrow. Tomorrow, after they do their plan and send her back, they're starting an operation, a sort of a jailbreak. Let's blow up headquarters and stop these Sentinels from moving operation. Which I guess, I mean, this works fine enough, but it's constant movement in the future and constant action. And the whole point of this, like I was saying, with comic books really liking their moment, the whole point of the future story arc, is just to give our heroes a really cool setting, a really post-apocalyptic world where you can go full on with your abilities and not worry about buildings breaking. And then you can heroically kill them all. Because that's what happens in the future. Everyone heroically dies. What do we got? We got a guy named Franklin who can shift reality. I'm not sure which X-Men this is, but he can shift reality. He gets vaporized. I'm like, full on Sentinel beam. He's a char spot on the ground. His wife, freaks out about that. As you do. When large building sized robots vaporize your husband, you might freak out a little bit. Right? So she freaks out, and then instead of taking cover, she's just telepathically trying to destroy people and gets clipped, right? She gets shot in the chest. She slowly dies. Storm, they're up in the headquarters because it's Storm and Colossus, the only two that make it up there. Storm, Colossus, and Wolverine. They have a move where Colossus yeets Wolverine in like a cannonball and he slashes. Well, they try this on some Omega level Sentinels and they fry Wolverine. I'm like, pieces are gone. Only the adamantium skeleton remains, like it does. He gets fried. They keep fighting. Storm, after the initial fight, gets a spear through the chest. Then she drops. They don't show me Colossus dying. But I think he gets 75 beams that just melt him out. He can only take so much. Wolverine wasn't dead at that point. He had to then, come up with half a body and slash at another one and then get stepped on. So he gets beamed and then stepped on to die. I think Magneto gets exploded. I don't remember exactly. But they all die horribly. And that's the whole point, right? We want some cool way for these cats to go down without actually losing anyone. I ran out of water. I'm trying to make it through. My throat drying up. In today, that is our modern time, we have Mystique trying to teach the humans a lesson by killing a senator, because that's a good nefarious thing to do. And this is what we're trying to stop as Kitty and the rest of the X-Men. A Senate hearing gets attacked, right? It's Charles Xavier sitting right there. From what I remember, he can just mind control whoever he wants. But we somehow, for some reason, don't do this. And he sort of just leaves and then gets incapacitated. But I'm like, it's a bit of a misuse of Xavier, but I'm not going to, I guess, harp on it too much because we get cool action scenes with Wolverine and the Blob and some guy flying around. Kitty ends up taking a bullet for a senator who's anti-mutant, and Mystique gets away because she can shapeshift. And that's a pretty OP ability as well. But it's not, the sort of the complications don't come there. They come more in your moral quandaries you would have. And then are overarching what happens to the future when the past, right? Because if you sent this kitty to the past and it did anything, it should instantly fix the future, right? And that's what I was struggling with as I was reading. I'm like, I can let some stuff go, but I don't know if I'm going to let everything go. But then we have a moment where they say the two personalities are kind of passing each other. They become aware of each other on the slipstream, so to speak. They're talking to each other. Where the old one's going back to the old life and the young one's going back into her young body. And they don't say it specifically, but the sense that I got from it is, and it's pretty cool, is like the old one did the stuff in the past. So I think she's carrying the new future with her as she comes back to the future, right? And the old one won't erase it because she was in the future too, and has some awareness. So them passing each other melds any kind of paradoxes you might have, so that now she'll go back to, instead of all her friends dead horribly, they're all magically alive, and they'll remember this story from when she was 13, and she'll have a moment of I'm happy again. And then this one just can go back and be 13 again, but with this extra maturity that helps her be an X-Man, right? I think that's sort of how we want to tie up all the loose ends. Because the other way is just too, horrific. I'm like, yeah, okay, you can go back to the future, but your husband and every other one of your friends is dead, and New York's in shambles, and there are multiple groups that want to kill you. So enjoy. You can't go back to that. I'm gonna go my way, even though after the switch we stay with the young one, and we never go back to tomorrow, as it's put. But I thought it was a cool, clean way to do it. I don't think this book, this adaptation, carries enough of itself to make up for sort of a lack of knowledge. I had watched, the '98 X-Men, back in the day, cartoon on TV. I've watched that, so I knew what Sentinels were. But I think if I hadn't, I don't know if I'd have had the full effect of what was happening, right? Because we're lacking in some details here, or in time given to those details. So I wouldn't recommend this as like your entry point to X-Men. Honestly, I'd recommend the cartoons. They're pretty slick. They're a little campy, but again, this is a campy sort of. There's nothing wrong with starting with a little fun with some comic book characters before you get into the rest of the meat of them. And that's sort of how it ends, with them sort of settling on the fact that we were not going to know the future if it worked or not, or if we made a parallel line or not, but that we've done what best we could for today, and we just got to move forward with that. That's how it sort of ends. All in all, an enjoyable book. And now, to save my horribly drying throat, I'm going to do a quick run of ads. These are my books. One of them actually being a time travel book. Yeah, no, go figure. Now, I think my time travel book's better, non-paradoxical. But, you'll judge it how you judge it if you read it. I think it's fun. In any case, you can buy my books and support the channel. You can get Kindle Unlimited and read my books, and that still supports the channel. Sort of Spotify-esque, but with books. Or you can, subscribe, or you can just enjoy. I'm really okay with all of it. Okay, people. I will talk to you next week, if the Ebola doesn't kill me.